Welcome into an all-new episode of the American Huddle alongside Andy Gresh. I'm Haley Outen. Andy, only 4 games to look forward to this week, all coming on Saturday. Let's start off with Tulane at Temple, noon Eastern on ESPNU. Both squads are bowl eligible. Both teams have 2 losses in conference play, so essentially both of these teams are playing to stay alive in terms of the conference championship.
Yeah, and I think for Temple, a little more skin in the game because they got that matchup against Cincinnati. In terms of Tulane, they'll need some help along the way. However, when you're still in the mix, I mean, look, how many people watching with Tulane are saying to themselves, hey man, it's November and we're still in the mix for the conference championship game? It just goes to show how far Willie Fritz has brought that program along. Temple's got everything to play for. It's all in front of them. They have to handle business this week against Tulane. And I think it's going to be tough. A diversified offensive attack. We need the good Temple defense to kind of show up this week to be able to slow down Tulane. I just don't know if they're going to be able to get it done. However, is weather going to end up being a factor? You're playing outdoors. You're in Philadelphia. In the Northeast, hey, for y'all that are in like Tulsa and SMU and places like that, it's getting gnarly up here. And to go from New Orleans to Philadelphia on what will be probably a cold Saturday, we'll see how Tulane reacts.
Well, all eyes in the East Division will be on Temple. If Temple loses, they are mathematically eliminated from the conference championship. But if they win, keeps hopes alive. So if they lose, Cincinnati actually claims the East if they beat USF.
And I do think that from an American Conference standpoint and from a college football standpoint, you're almost kind of rooting for Temple, so that way the Cincinnati game really does matter, because in the West, we know coming up over the next couple of weeks, there are going to be battles that are going to be a part of deciding that division. Again, I know I sound like a broken record and people are going to think I'm being, honking out or whatever, but I'm really not. The depth in the American is very real, to the point now to where these November games on both sides of the conference are now starting to matter.
All right, let's step out of conference for a second. We have a top 25 matchup as number 21 Navy hits the road to number 16 Notre Dame. Malcolm Perry, he's having quite a year, the quarterback for Navy. He surpassed 1,000 rushing yards for the season, becoming just the second player in history to do that, joining some pretty impressive company in the former quarterback Keenan Reynolds.
Yeah, and Malcolm Perry staying upright has been big to the Navy's success this year. Yes, their defense is good, Navy people. Don't start screaming at me now, but I mean, let's face it, Malcolm Perry is going to be one of the candidates for Players of the Year in the league. He's having a fantastic season, and yet they still need him to give them as much as he has been giving them, if not maybe even a little bit more, Haley. And look, going to South Bend, it's great for the American because it's a big-time primetime game. You put Notre Dame on the marquee, people are automatically going to pay attention. But, like 7-8 years ago, this game was a walk for Notre Dame. Now, it's a real challenge for Notre Dame to have to get ready for Ken Niumatalolo's offense and what they're going to present Notre Dame. I expect it to be a battle. Navy is gritty and gutty, and they're never going to pack it in. That's why Notre Dame's got to be on upset alert.
Yeah, 3 1,000-yard seasons for Malcolm Perry. Pretty impressive.
Well, another thing, too, if I may, I'm not a Notre Damer, so I root against them all the time. So for me, this is rah-rah, go Navy this week. There's just something about Notre Dame that, I don't know, just irks me.
Some people forget, though, Navy only 1 loss on the season, and that is to Memphis a little bit earlier on.
Yeah.
So if Navy is able to win on the road at Notre Dame, are people paying more attention to the Mids?
There's no question, in part, because they could end up in an American Conference Championship game. And if they beat Notre Dame, Haley, they would have a resume to say, listen, you could put us in one of those New Year's Six bowls and we'll be just fine. The one thing that I love about Navy and Notre Dame, though, as much as I'm not a Notre Dame guy, there is a different kind of thrill and pageantry to this game that I don't think you get with the other service academies going against Notre Dame. And maybe that's because Navy beat all those teams to the punch in terms of getting good, but this is a big-time national game on Saturday, and it's a good point that when you think about the whole non-conference, even if Navy doesn't make the American Championship game, but if they find a way to beat Notre Dame here, that's a plant your flag in the ground kind of game to be able to elevate which bowl you may be selected to.
Navy at Notre Dame, that's 2:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC. All right, number 18, Memphis heads to Houston this week. Both of these teams are coming off of byes. Andy, for Houston, though, the Cougs are 1-4 in conference play this year. On the other side, though, Memphis controls their entire destiny when it comes to not only playing in but hosting the American Championship.
You know, it's going to be good luck to Houston because they have to slow down one of the best offenses in the American, if not the best, and one of the top 20 probably in college football. You know, Brady White's played great. We know about Kenny Gainwell. He's having a heck of a year. And go ahead and sleep on those wide receivers because Mike Norvell and crew will just stretch the field, throw it down there on you, and put up 21 points pretty quick. Houston's got to find a way to keep it close. Stay within 7 to 10 points and give yourself a chance off a turnover or a block kick or something. Don't let it get tilted on you quickly. Unfortunately, I just don't know if Houston has enough to be able to handle this Memphis offense.
All right, Memphis at Houston, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. Final game of the day, Cincinnati heads down to Tampa to take on USF. The Bearcats are sitting at 5-0 in American play, and similar to Memphis, they also control their own destiny in regards to the championship. What can we learn about the Cincinnati team as they head on the road to Tampa for an East Division matchup?
Okay, so we mentioned that Temple is around the corner for Cincinnati. Now, I know that there'll be a lot of people who will grab their phones or whatever, and they'll look at the record, and they'll say it's South Florida, and they're 4-5, and they had issues against Temple in terms of scoring the football, and they've had issues scoring all year. So for me, it's will Cincinnati stay focused on the task at hand and not think about what's to come for them? We know Temple's on the schedule. We know Memphis is on the schedule. They can't look past USF. Go on the road, be economical. Get in, get out. Get your win, try to stay healthy, get back to Cincinnati, and load up for 2 games that you know are going to really help determine where you're going to end up at the end of the year.
All right, well, let's take a look at the standings. After all, we are in November, heading closer and closer towards that American Championship game. Andy, this is pretty cool. The American is the only FBS conference that has 4 one-loss teams through Week 11. So when you look at these standings, what initially jumps out to you?
Well, the battle in the West and how, if we think back, you and I were not sitting here early in the year looking at Memphis Navy and saying, wow, this may end up determining who hosts the American Conference Championship game. And you know what? Depending on what happens with Navy and SMU, it might be the game that ends up being a part of a determining factor. So I think the first thing that jumps out to me is that those September and October games start to matter. The other thing, too, is that you've got Navy, SMU, Memphis, Cincinnati. Any one of those teams, if in a New Year's Six bowl game, are going to be competitive. They're not going to get rolled. They're going to be tough to prepare for, and they're going to be players on all 4 of those teams that will jump out on the national landscape. So the conference standings really indicate, Haley, just how good the conference has gotten in such a short period of time.
All right, still a few weeks to go, but when you look at the top teams, the top players across this conference, early pick for the Americans Offensive Player of the Year.
All right, maybe we can narrow it down a little bit, right? This is like the question about the whole give me one word on the teams that I tanked on.
You're having a hard time making decisions this week.
Yeah, but I think for this, let's narrow it down, right? For Memphis, if there's one player to me that will jump out above the rest, it'll probably be Kenny Gainwell. So let's put him on the list. We mentioned Malcolm Perry, quarterback at Navy. Let's put him on the list as well. I would say Shane Buechele, the quarterback of SMU, has had a phenomenal year for Sonny Dykes. Let's throw him on that list. And then I'm trying to think of somebody for Cincinnati. I don't know if there's anyone that jumps out. I would say right now those might be some of the top 3 candidates. And the other good thing about these standings is the games in the month of November are really going to help separate those guys that I mentioned in terms of a Conference Player of the Year candidate. So it's got to be exciting for the American because it's more than just the result of the game that's on the line. There's going to be some of those superlatives as well. And let me flip it around a little bit. Who's the Coach of the Year in the American Athletic Conference?
Are you asking me?
No, but I'm just saying that, well, I could. It would have been fun, but...
Yeah.
think about it. You've got Luke Fickell in Cincinnati. You've got what's going on in Memphis, SMU, and Navy. All those teams are in the mix. Let's say Tulane ends up with 8 wins on the year. Does Willie Fritz get a nod for Coach of the Year? A lot of great coaches in the American.
And I think all of these things will kind of be parsed out with the results that we're going to see over the next 3 weeks.
All right, well, certainly something that we will continue discussing as we inch closer and closer to the season finale, and that is the American Championship on December 7th, which we will be in full attendance at.
That's right, and I
Super
can't
excited.
wait. Oh, I mean, it's
Super
going
excited.
to be so much fun. There is a sadistic part of me that hopes we end up in Memphis, only because those fans have been the hardest on me all year long. Like the problem is they know I've been right all year long. They just don't want to admit it.
That's one of the things I like about you is you don't fear a good challenge. So throwing yourself into the fire at Memphis, ready just to confront some people.
Yeah, like
Head
I've
on.
been.
I like that.
Yeah, like I never hear guff from Cincinnati because we throw bouquets at them and they're having a
They're
great
5-0
year,
in
right?
American play. They're pretty
Yeah,
happy
right,
now.
exactly. So everybody's
So-
everybody's thrilled about that. Yeah, so they got a little Navy hate or whatever. And SMU got more upset at Brisket than what I've said about their football team this year.
A
So
lot of this anger is carryover from the American mailbag on Tuesday, so it's
yeah.
it's resonated.
Who would have thought that having an opinion on barbecue would have really brought out the worst in the American
You have
Conference
seriously
fans?
offended a lot of people
Yeah.
around this conference.
I think it's pretty cool, quite honestly. Again, no, it's going to be a ton of fun. And whether we end up in Cincinnati or SMU or at Navy or Memphis, we're going to have ourselves a great time. And look, it's shaping up to be another great American Conference Championship game. I know it's going to be featured nationally on ABC, but that's going to be a battle that people nationally are going to be paying attention to. Whether it's two teams with, small numbers in the old right-hand column or guys that are competing. I mean, Kenny Gainwell has a chance to be like the national freshman of the year. I mean, people are going to find that guy more and more over the next couple of weeks and be like, wow, that guy's pretty doggone good. Ton of great players in the American. So for me, it doesn't matter where we end up, although Memphis would be fun.
All right, well, looking forward to another great week across the American. Make sure to tune into the action all day Saturday. You can follow along on Twitter at American_FB or head over to Facebook for full game highlights. We'll see you back here next week. On behalf of Andy Gresh, I'm Haley Outen.